Do you feel you were born for more? Get ready to uncover your God-given purpose so you can impact the world with your gifts, your talents, and your story. So welcome everyone to today's member training for Purpose Planner, 7 steps to uncover your God-given purpose so you can impact the world with your gifts, talents, and stories. Now, this is a topic I'm really excited about because I think knowing your purpose and knowing where you're going is super key to knowing where you're going, how you're going to get there, because there's so many ways and means. It's like going on the road trip. If you don't have a map and you don't have, like in our case, Google Maps to show you where to go, you pretty much will be driving around aimlessly, wasting a lot of gas and energy, which isn't really what we want to be doing with our life and our business. This is content that I think I actually like to revisit on a yearly basis. Like, am I aligned with my purpose? Am I doing the things I should be doing? Because things can come along and opportunities can come along that really can sway us from our original direction if we are not careful. So some of the common challenges I find when, asking people about, do they know their purpose and, do they know where they're going? Several people have said overcoming self-doubt and understanding my purpose and potential. Trying to figure out my spiritual gifts and how to use them. Finding my audience and my point of view. Finding the right message that resonates with the right audience. I don't know what efforts are revenue generating activities, because we could waste a lot of time doing things that aren't really going to get us there. I'm unsure how to create content topics that are engaging and relevant to my audience. Getting organized and staying consistent. Yep, that's a big one. Remaining focused on the right task, so you're not wasting your time. And scaling my business to the next level, because if you're so busy worrying about looking under the hood of the car, you can't drive it anywhere if you're still worrying about how the pieces fit together. Because my biggest belief is without a purpose, a plan, a strategy, and a direction, you are simply throwing spaghetti at the wall. Now, I'm sure all of us can agree to this. This is something we've all felt, whether it's, trying to figure out parenting, to running a business, to, deciding on what direction to go next. Unless we have a sort of plan and strategy, it's literally trying a little bit of this and trying a little bit of that, like trying on a pair of shoes to see what fits, right? But if you know the right size, it can make your journey a lot easier. So let me introduce you to the gift of clarity. What we're going to cover today is the 7 steps to uncover your God-given purpose so you can impact the world with your gifts, talents, and story. Because each of us have gifts and talents that God has purposed in us to use for His glory and to help others. It's not just for our own self-gain, but sometimes we don't know what that looks like or how to put it into the right format. This scripture is one of my favorite. Blessed are those who listen to me, watching daily at my doors, waiting at my doorway. So we can, look at man and we can look at the world for a whole bunch of different topics and tools and techniques and all the gurus who say they've got the next best shiny thing. But at the end of the day, if we're not following God's plan for our life, because you are inherently made a special way, that things that work for you won't work for someone else. But if you make sure you keep God at the center and make sure that you're at least taking action and taking the steps to move yourself there, you certainly will get to where He wants you to be. So today's training is designed for you if you are an entrepreneur, influencer, and leader, you want to impact a lot of people. If you have big dreams but lack the focus or a plan of how to actually achieve those dreams. If you want to make a big impact and leave a legacy, it's about, what we can do to pay it forward. If you are passionately purpose-driven, if you know God is calling you to use your gifts and talents for His glory. If you want to build a platform for influence. If you're tired of patchworking pieces to try and get things to work. Perhaps you've wasted time, money, and lots of resources chasing those shiny objects, those, next, courses or books or software. I know I've wasted a lot of money over the years just because I think, I need it. And then I realize I actually don't. And if you have a business that you really want to take to the next level, you're tired of just bit-piecing things and you really want to have that plan, this is really going to be useful for you. Step number 1 is why. This is an important aspect that sometimes we don't think about and often overlook. What is your motivation? Why are you doing what you're doing today? I mean, is it perhaps you want to make money, or you want to leave a legacy, or you have dreams that you feel that you need to fulfill, or perhaps you have a bigger purpose? Or perhaps you want to be famous, or perhaps you know that God is calling you to something and you're not quite sure how that all works together. If we are not clear of what motivates us, we can be very easily swayed by the next thing. Like God says in the Bible, you need to build your house on the rock, not on the sand, because the shifting sands come and go with the seasons. And also not to confuse this, that, often God calls us to seasons in our life and assignments, and those do change. And we're not necessarily talking about that for now, because that will shift and change depending on where you need to be and as you grow and as you mature. But overall, there is always some deep-seated motivation that often can come right back to childhood. For example, if you are really motivated to make a lot of money, now it can be a good and a bad thing. Now, a bad thing is if you are just focused on making money, that you will go and do whatever it takes to make the most amount of money, even if it means, walking over people. Now, that is not what we're talking about. That is not a good motivation. And if that is a motivation, it won't last for very long until you start to see the problems. But having the motivation to make money for good is a good thing, because, money, it gives you choices. Money gives you options. It gives you the ability to do things. Perhaps you want to start a nonprofit, or perhaps you want to grow something. Money is a good motivation as long as it's in the right place. Now, perhaps you are very legacy-based. You want to create products and programs or something that you want to leave your children, that your children and your grandchildren will benefit from in years to come. That's also very noble. And perhaps you just know that there's some purpose out there, that you are meant for more, that there's something big that perhaps you haven't really discovered. And maybe now God is calling you to really step out. And perhaps you've had these dreams and desires from when you were a kid and you just shoved them down, but they still pop up. Now, on the flip side, sometimes we can be motivated by the wrong things and not even know it. For instance, for years, I was forever chasing approval, and I could never figure out why, because I had a root of rejection. Now, my family, we all have history. All our families have junk in the trunk. There's always something about that's happened in our family, and most families have some crazy history. But for me as well, just like many others, is suffering from rejection from coming from a broken family. And that rejection always made me want to seek out people's approval. So even being a perfectionist caused issues. And oftentimes it's like if you're trying to please somebody, for instance, you want daddy approval, but maybe dad isn't alive anymore. But sometimes we don't realize that as an adult, this has become ingrained in our psyche, that if we haven't really dug deep to figure out what those roots are, what will happen is the fruit that will be displayed in your life will just keep repeating itself. It's almost like a broken record, right? You start, so for instance, somebody starts a business and they go out there and, spend all this money and they end up broke, in a year, and they can't seem to figure out why they never can get things successful. As if they haven't got their foundation, their motivation correctly, perhaps they're self-sabotaging. And that's why I feel it's so important that, you have your motivation and you do the hard work of going back and really seeking God on this, because sometimes you can go years without realizing there is a deeper problem. But if God is calling you to healing and inner healing, that is how he's really going to work through your life. So definitely make sure to take the time to really think about it. The big why is deciding on your motivation for your big idea, your product, your program, your book, or your business. Like, why do you want to create this? What is so important about this that you feel you need to do it? Why do you want to share it with the world? Why is it something that you feel that maybe was just an idea from long ago? Why does it feel like it's eating at you and saying to you, hey, I'm an idea, I need to get out? Like, why is that important? And, why is it important that you succeed? Like, how is that going to change your life if you think, if this is important to you? And is your why big enough to stay the course? And what I mean is if you are constantly chasing success based on what other people are doing, it's trying to walk a mile in their shoes when the shoes don't fit. And, is this why going to keep you going even when things get tough, that no matter how hard things are, to really persist with that, will you be able to continue? And then the other question is, why now? Why is it important that you make this shift? Why is it important that you make this change today? What is so pressing? Because if you know those bigger whys, that'll really help you keep focused. So when you have these opportunities or things that come along your way, or choices you need to make, they'll be so much easier to make when you know where you're going. Now, let's talk about this, the benefits of a purpose-driven approach. Now, the reason why I like to take this view is, of course, it's not everybody's cup of tea, and that is fine. If you have a different motivation, that's great. But what I've seen over the years for the leaders and entrepreneurs and people that I've dealt with is that when you have a purpose approach, there is far more longevity. When you know you were born for legacy and impact, You can build for longevity. You can build for the future. You're prepared to go through the hard stuff. You're prepared to take the time. You're not going to just rush things and expect an overnight success. You know that with the purpose-driven approach, you need to elevate your voice above the noise, because there's a whole bunch of noise out there that's not really helping people. And you know that you have something important to say, and only you can say it in the way that you say it. And that you are confident that your message matters. Once you have a real understanding and a revelation of that, you will stay the course, and you will know that this is important. And you know who your message is going to, your message is going to make an impact. So you know the value in providing what you do in order to help those people. And you're persistent enough to push through the obstacles and the challenges. So whether it's financial obstacles or time obstacles, you're not going to just give in, because you know you're headed in the right direction. So don't be discouraged if your calling is unclear right now. God created you with a special purpose, and it will be right in line with the way that you are wired. You don't have to strive to receive it either, because you just need to delight yourself in the Lord, and it will become clearer over time. Because in his word, he says, take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 37:4. He knows those deep down desires that you have. Perhaps as a child, you dreamed of being a writer and that you want to write a book. He knows those and he sees those, but it's a process. And I think that's the problem with modern day societies. We want to jumpstart the process. We want to microwave our mistakes or our methods. We want to just get there quicker. But I can tell you, rushing it isn't going to help, because you will just be back to trying to build things on sand, and that doesn't last. But holding on to those desires and holding on to those dreams and then putting the steps into place is really going to give you that clarity. Step number 2 is the who. Who are you? What is your personal style? Do you know what your brand story testimony is like? What is the story that you grew up with that you can share with others that show that you've overcome something? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Are there certain things you're better at than others? Are you good with numbers? Are you creative? Because there's no point in creating a business or starting a project that really is in opposition to who you really are. Because believe me, that is a lot of extended effort. It'll probably take you 10 times more effort to do something that's not in your strengths, trying to work out your weaknesses, when you really are born for better. How would you describe your personality? Are you like outgoing? Are you an introvert? Do you like to work on your own? Do you prefer to work in teams? These are very important questions that I think we gloss over in life. And perhaps maybe when you were in high school, they told you to take a personality test or an aptitude test. But as we become adults, we are products of our experiences, but sometimes we sort of lose focus along the way, and we forget that how important this is. And this is something I recommend people do every 5 years, because things shift. Here are some great tools that I love to use, and I always advise people to try, is to really get to the crux of how you are wired, how your brain is wired, what your personality is like. The first one I like is the spiritual gifts test, and you just Google that. That will really give you an understanding of, from a Christian perspective, what has God given you that you're good at, that you can use. Another favorite one I love to use is based on the Myers-Briggs personality formats. It's called 16 Personalities. It's a free test you can do online. It takes less than 12 minutes, and it'll come out and give you a name for the kind of person you are, and it'll describe who you are and how you work best, or how you parent, how your relationships. And of course, let's just state this clearly, that not everybody fits a mold, but having an understanding of how you come across to the world is actually important, which brings me to my next one. Sally Hogshead has got a really nice personality test that I like too. And this is a little different in that most other personality tests measure how you see the world and how you look at things. But this one measures how the world sees you. So perhaps you didn't realize that you come across as an encourager. Perhaps you might be really hard on yourself, and you maybe talk badly to yourself in your head, but you don't realize that you are far kinder to others than you are yourself. And this is how we start to see how things fit together. So using those, and that is howtofascinate.com, you can find out those. I definitely would advise you take that, because it could really be a really good eye-opener. Now, another thing to know about this section is that you want to just by discovering who you are and what your strengths are, you can pick the right business model that's for you. I mean, do you prefer to be a service-based, product-based? Do you prefer coaching? Do you prefer consulting, speaking, mentoring, writing, content creation? How do you like to work? And this is something you get to choose. You get to design this. Like, if you don't necessarily like dealing with a lot of clients and with different ideas and different formats, then maybe consulting is not for you. Or perhaps you are an encourager and you like to work one-on-one with people, then perhaps coaching is good for you. Perhaps you don't like dealing with people. Perhaps you just like to stay in your little corner of the world and you create greatness by writing stories and books and programs and curriculum. Maybe you're a content creator. Maybe you like to create encouraging content that you can put on a YouTube channel. There are so many ways and means to go about this. And this is what I always say to people. Comparison and competition will keep you chasing chaos. This is important enough for me. Let me repeat this. Comparison and competition will keep you chasing chaos. So if you are constantly comparing yourself to what Susie Q down the road is doing and thinking she's got a success because she did that, or worrying about the competition and feeling like you're not good enough because this other person is 5 years ahead of you, you will constantly be in a state of chaos. And what you won't realize is that you are just perpetuating bad habits and bad cycles because you haven't stopped to think about who you are and how you can best serve the world. Because in Romans 8:28, it says, we know that in all things, God works for good with those who love him, those whom he has called according to his purpose. Because again, purpose is what he's called you to do. My purpose is different to your purpose, and your purpose is different to the next person. But it's up to you to really knock on the door and keep knocking until God reveals it to you. And sometimes it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it takes several times knocking, several doors going in and out, and several times learning, and because there's things you learn away that shape you. Step number 3 is wants. What do you want? Have you ever asked yourself this question? Like, what are your goals and your ideals? Like, what is that deep-seated need? Like, what do you want to achieve? Like, where do you want to be in 90 days? Where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? If we're not thinking future and working backwards, we're never going to get there. We're going to just sit in the same situation, rolling, spinning our wheels and then complaining a year or two later that somebody else is far more successful who maybe had the same idea as you because they did something about it. What do you want to actually do? Do you want more reach? Do you want more impact? Do you want to make more money? Do you want more freedom to travel, or you want more time? How do you want your day to look like? We live in a first world country, and we live in a first world society where we now have everything we possibly can ask for at our fingertips. Just in that palm of our hand, we have our phone that is everything from a music player to a librarian to a map to storage, voice recorder. I mean, everything that is possibly available. You don't know something, you can look it up. So really, now is the best time ever in history for you to be able to start that business, create a product, build a brand, because we have the tools available. You just need to decide what it is you want. A good exercise to start with is with goal setting. Start with the end in mind. If you know you want to be somewhere in a year, just like if you were training for a marathon. Now, I know this because my husband is a marathon runner, and he takes a good year to really train for a marathon, because you can't go out there and run 26 miles if you've never trained. It takes a step-by-step approach. And what I find has been the same thing with us running our businesses as well as his running. And I do figure skating, and I know that if I don't have a goal in mind and know that I'm aiming for something, I won't know what steps to put in and what I need to work on. Because if you know where you want to end up, you can then backtrack and know that these are the things you need to do. No matter how you feel and no matter what your day looks like, even if you're not feeling like it, if you don't stick to your goals and get up and actually take action, nothing happens. What do you want your life to look like? What do you want your business to look like? What transformation do you want to offer others? Like, how do you feel you best serve them? And here's a big question. What is holding you back? Sometimes thinking about this, we can easily point fingers outside, but sometimes we need to look inside and say, what is that big thing that's holding me back? Perhaps it's fear. Is it fear of failure? Is it fear of success? Like, what would your family think if all of a sudden you made a lot of money? Would that make them uncomfortable? Does it make you uncomfortable? What would failure look like? What would people think? Are you worried about what people think? Are you worried about what God thinks? Perhaps you feel you're letting yourself or God down. I mean, these are all, really realistic questions that a lot of us think about, but we never really verbalize. Sometimes you need to ask yourself this so you can actually get to the bottom of it. Because in Matthew 6:33, it says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. And that is a big difference with us as Christian entrepreneurs and leaders and influencers, is that We are not just chasing what the world wants by the, the fame, the fortune, and the money. Although I believe those things do come eventually if you have the right motivation. But we are really chasing a kingdom mindset. And having a kingdom mindset means we want to build things for God's glory, not our own. And we want to do it God's way. Which means it comes down to us yielding to God and being obedient to him, because sometimes we can fight him. And I know I've done this myself. For 8 years, I fought him on things that he wanted to do in my life, but I thought I knew better until everything fell apart. Believe me, save yourself a lot of hassle. Just let it go and let God have his way, because he really knows you better. Step number 4 is your avatar. Now, I'm not talking about the movie Avatar. Another word for this would be your client avatar or your target market. A lot of times, and so many people I speak to, one of the things they say, well, I have this and I'm good at this and I do this, so who's going to buy my stuff? And I'm like, well, we don't really, you could have skills. That's great. But if you don't know who you're aiming at or who you're speaking to, you're pretty much speaking to nobody. And let me tell you this, you can't please everybody. There's a certain point of view that you have that will resonate with people that perhaps will not resonate with someone else. I mean, just look at music, for example, or restaurants. Like, why are there so many Italian restaurants? Because each of them have a different way of serving food, and their recipes are different and their flavor profiles are different. Same thing with music. Why do we need another pop singer, right? There can only be one Celine Dion. There can only be one Barbara Streisand. But at the end of the day, there is still a lot of indie music artists out there that have a really unique style and point of view. And they do find their own tribe, their own followers. So knowing who you're aiming at is super important in this whole picture. Know who are your ideal clients, the ideal audience or readers you want to reach. Can you describe them? If you had to make the little stick figures out of them, what do they look like? Where do they live? Demographics is great, but we want to go a little deeper. What does he or she care about most? What are those issues that keep them up at night? What are they stressing over? I mean, is it a parent with a child with mental health that you can perhaps talk to, or perhaps it's a couple who are struggling through marital issues, or perhaps it's a new mother who's trying to figure out how to get her baby to sleep. These are all really relevant issues that you can provide solutions for. What's their biggest struggle or challenge? This is, I tell you, if you take note of this is one sentence that you can offer anybody in any situation that'll give you a really good open door to having a communication and get a lot of feedback about what is your biggest struggle with X or biggest challenge with X. Like, what is your problem? And you fill in the blank. What is the X to you? That'll give you a lot of insight about how to really serve your client. Because think about, how are you the solution to their problem? Forget about what everybody else is doing, and forget about whether there are already solutions to this problem already. Because what we've mentioned before, especially with our faith, there is no competition in Christ. We know that God's destined for us. And even though it might be similar, somebody else might have a similar business model, not everybody's going to pick that flavor. Like, everyone's got a different flavor of ice cream. So don't assume everybody likes vanilla, right? Finding your target market is discovering what people want before you create. Another big tip here is, big mistake I've seen people waste a lot of time and money is, I have this great idea. I'm just going to build it and they will come. No, that doesn't work anymore. We don't live in, the early 19th century where in the British high street you had the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, and they were the one of that only industry. So if you went to the grocer, there was only one grocer to get your food from. Now, the world has completely changed. It's now global. You have access to products from around the world. People are spoiled for choice. So what you want to do is you want to discover what they need first before you spend time and money and resources creating them. The simple ways of doing this is to run a poll or a survey. Like, there are many free options. There's Google Forms. There are, SurveyMonkey. You could ask a poll on Facebook. You could ask your friends. Obviously, friends are not your ideal audience, especially in a business sense, but just getting people's feedback will really open your eyes to a lot of, and they might even show you problems that you never thought about. You can borrow other people's audiences. Somebody who's already built up a following in a certain industry, you can kind of partner with that. Sell your product before you buy. So in other words, create it. If you look at TV shows, they always like to, before they do a whole series, they do a pilot. They create it, they produce it, they market it, they sell it, and they have the stations have to pick it up and order a whole series. Now, sometimes they don't do so well. So instead of having 12 episodes of having to pay all those actors and all that cost. They've basically, really saved themselves a lot of wasted money by doing that. Consider when you go into a store and you get a sample, or perhaps a beta version of a program. Before you do the whole thing, see if people actually want it. Listen to comments in forums, like Facebook's great for this. Like if you are in any groups, you'll notice people might ask similar questions. Just by really paying attention and seeing what people are saying can save you a lot of hassle. What products or books or services are people already buying? I mean, you just need to go on Amazon and do a search for the product or service or thing that you want to offer, even like in books. What are people buying? What is that itch that you can scratch? And then you can think about what is missing from the market. How can you show up with your voice and your angle to really provide them? Because in Hebrews 6:10, it says, God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. So if God's calling you to help people, you need to find who those people are. You need to find your tribe. Because back in the days, and people are still mentally wired for this, is that we were, the way we survived is through tribes, by relying on community and everybody pitching in, which really comes back to the body of Christ thing. If we are all working in unison, and the eye and the hand and the foot and the mouth are all working, the body can work. But if we're all struggling to try to be the foot or the hand or the mouth, that's not going to work. So really understanding in that how we are, God's calling us to help people by finding those people who need us is really key. Step number 5 is pain relief. Now you might ask me, what is this about? What I mean about pain relief is that what pain points is your ideal avatar or client, your target market, experiencing that you can help them with? What keeps them up at night? What is that pain that is so, like, it's immediate? If we think about the vitamin versus the pain approach, like taking a vitamin is great for your health, and everyone knows you should, because it's giving you those things you might be missing in your diet. But it's like if you miss a day, no big deal, But if you have a migraine and you need a pain pill, you know that you need that pain pill right now, because you cannot think, you cannot function with the migraine. So you are willing to do whatever it takes to make that pain go away. And that's kind of when you're creating a solution in the business, is you don't want to go for the vitamin approach because you'll just waste your time. You want to go for the pain approach. Like what is their immediate need that they need help with? What will happen if the pain does not go away? If this person is dealing with, sleepless nights from it because they don't know how to get their newborn baby to sleep, how is that affecting the rest of their life? Like their family, relationships. I know I've been there 3 times. It's not a happy chappy, not a pretty picture. So, if you think about that in the bigger picture, that by continuing to allow people to suffer through this, it's not what we want. We want to be able to help them. Because think of it this way: by you withholding the solution, you are depriving people of a breakthrough. This is really an important mindset shift I want you to make, that you are not trying to sell people things and pull the wool over their eyes into, tricking them into buying things from you. You are a solution to a problem, and you are going to provide breakthrough and change people's lives to help them for the better. So by you not getting started and doing the things you need to do, you are withholding them and keeping them in a situation. So just framing that really helps you understand, because when you understand how you are the solution to the problem, you realize the importance of your message. Let me repeat that. When you understand how you are the solution to their problem, you will finally realize that the importance of your message. Because Esther 4:14 says, "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this." So you are hearing this today, not by accident. God has called you to do what he's called you to do for a time as this, because God needs his children and his army to step up and to create products and programs and services and support for people out there who need it. So just remember now that the time is now. Step number 6 is fascination. This is something that isn't often asked about, is what makes you interesting? Like, let's look at it realistically. Why should people pay attention to you? Like, why should they care? What niche can you own? Like, what angle or what story can you pitch to people if you were interviewed on the media today? What is that angle, that story? What is your point of view? Like, how is it different? How have your life experiences really got you in a position where you have the skills and you have that maturity to really offer something of value to someone else who's perhaps 5 or 10 years behind you, or even one step behind you. What are those life experiences that you've endured that you can offer others hope? Perhaps you've beat breast cancer, or perhaps you've recovered from chronic illness, or perhaps you've been able to have a successful marriage. These are all things that offer others hope that those who are going through a hard time can really find very interesting and applicable. And how do you like to connect with others? So going back to this assessment, how to fascinate will give you a really good understanding about how the world sees you, and knowing that perhaps how you fit in the world will help you really clarify how you show up and how you communicate. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the time we have some great ideas, but if we're not communicating effectively in the way that we can communicate, perhaps you don't like being on the stage and speaking in front of lots of people. Perhaps you like to write your words in print. Or perhaps you do love to stand in front of people and you want to be able to position yourself. Having this kind of data will really help you succeed. So finally, step 7, transformation. What is important about a transformation is that you need to know what big transformation do you offer your clients, your avatar, your target market. How are you going to help them go from point A to point Z? What is that big result you help your audience achieve, your readers, your customers? What does that look like for them? What will their life look like after working with you? Reading your book or using your product. Just paint that picture and just say, you're struggling right now, but once you've worked with me, the transformation you'll have is this. Because people don't pay for ideas. People don't pay for tools. They don't pay for another thing to do. They pay for transformation. If you can show them a clear-cut method, like if you're a trainer and you say, I can help you lose 10 pounds in 10 days, and you can provide proof for that and guidance, people will pay for that transformation because it's their pain that they are trying to relieve. And the transformation is, describe where they are now. Often looking at it from, okay, what is your situation right now? How is this affecting your life? And where do you want to be? Look, allow yourself and who you're serving to dream. Really dream about where your life would look like when things go well, when you have the money and the time and resources and the freedom to do. What does that look like? Because there is a mental shift that happens, and a very important part that it happens in your mind. Like if you are have a vision of where you're going, because in God's word it says, "My people perish for lack of vision." If you don't have a visual idea of where you're going, and this is true, I've seen this as well in my training with skating and talking to other athletes, that when you can actually imagine yourself going through the process, taking the steps, going through the routine, repeating it in your mind, you're creating that muscle memory, and the mind-body connection is so powerful that if you can imagine that transformation of what your life would look like, or what success looks like, you are more than likely, and the percentage really increases of how you will actually become successful because you've imagined it. What will happen if you don't find the solution? Like if a client is looking for something and they don't take action, what does that mean for where their life will be? And how will your solution change their lives? Always focus on the change and the transformation, because that will then, whatever you charge for your product or service will not matter. It'll be irrelevant, because if you can provide a good enough argument, not necessarily an argument, but a point of view that this is what they need, people will buy. Now, let's talk about tools versus strategy, because so many people say, well, I need to know the tools. I need to know which social media platform, and show me how to get more likes on Facebook, or what program should I use for this. The tools and those are only ways to get your message out into the world, and they're great. We definitely need to use them, but having clarity and strategy is how you plan to reach them, and the tools will become secondary. So if you know that your strategy is to meet people at a certain demographic, and they hang out on Facebook, you will have the clarity of mind, and you will know how to put into place how to reach them. So you don't have to mess with all the other methods, because you don't have to be everywhere. And you don't have to be all places to all people, but you definitely want to be able to know where you're going so you can definitely get there. When you focus on the transformation and the impact, the steps will become clear. When you know where you're going and you have that map, we don't use printed maps anymore, but Siri and Google will definitely help you. If you need to find your way, you are going to be following those directions, and that is what is important, is to follow those directions so you get to where you need to be. In 2 John 1:6, it says, and this is love, that we walk in obedience to his commands, as you have heard from the beginning. His command is that you walk in love. So if we have a motivation based in love, and we've got ourselves cleaned up from any resentment or unforgiveness or wrong motivation, and we always have that purpose-driven love approach, I always believe that you are on the right track, because God sees your heart. He knows your desires. He wants to help you get there. It's just a matter of taking action. Because here's the thing. You can be a parked car, and you can be a very nice, shiny parked car amongst other parked cars. But the only way you really get to use your car is if you take it out the garage. You need to be able to take action, because sitting there wondering, pondering, and hoping, wishing, and praying is not going to do much for you unless you actually get in the car, turn on the ignition, and drive. And this is what's important, is to take action. Always take your ideas to God and pray for guidance and confirmation. But be ready to take the steps towards action, because you can't drive a parked car. God will use all methods as long as you are willing. But sometimes it means he wants you to take that step of faith. And sometimes it means it might not be 100% clear. Because let me tell you this now. If you're looking for a blueprint that's going to be on the wall, and God says, do this, this, and this, it's not how it works. It's a process. But if you are willing just to take that one step, and then the next step, and then the next step, God will show up and honor that. So I really want to encourage you with that you are on the right track. You just need to make sure that you take the action.
If you want more free resources that we only share with our newsletter community, go to mimikacooney.com and sign up today. We have great resources like ebooks, inspirational screensavers, printables, and exclusive access to our community.